We are moving into the first real production phase of the semester where you're going to be getting your story list together and using that as your guide really for the rest of the work that we'll be doing. I am not going to assign stories per se. Instead, what I'm going to want you to do is to develop your own story ideas out of the work that you've done in consultation with me. Some people are naturally good at coming up with story ideas and developing them. Some people are not. But what we're going to do is get after this in a kind of formal process so that you're present, engaged, and thinking of how you go about putting together stories each step along the way. And I want to start with this concept of saving string. This is something I got from a guy named Roy Peter Clark, who is one of the preeminent writing coaches in the country. He works primarily for the Poynter Institute, so I've got, as you can see, a link to his blog over here at the Poynter website, which I would strongly recommend you checking out at some point. He also has a fabulous book over here called Writing Tools that is, you can see it's really cheap. You can get it on your Kindle or in person, but it's a fabulous thing to have on your bookshelf just to help, because there's lots of really good ideas and things to think about each step along the way of composing any kind of narrative or nonfiction. The concept, the specific thing that he's talking about is, he talks in the book about two metaphors for gathering material for stories. One metaphor is composting, as you throw a whole bunch of stuff together that eventually something's going to come up. But the other metaphor he talks about is saving string. And I heard him talk through this process at a workshop years and years ago, probably about in 1999 or 2000. And it really struck me, the idea of taking a whole bunch of things, and the metaphor he uses specifically is when you collect information on a certain topic, it's like collecting a whole bunch of string that turns into a ball of twine that gets really big and becomes something really strong and amazing. So what he is talking about is just almost unconsciously putting things together in such a way that you'll be able to come back and refer to them, and stories will rise out of what you're working on. And what I've tried to get you all to do in doing the research, identifying sources, and following social media is doing the modern or postmodern version of saving string. What you'll need to save string is some kind of container. He talks a lot about really using just a box, like literally having a cardboard box sitting in his office, and whenever he runs across material pertaining to the subject that he's interested in, then he just grabs it and tosses it in the box. In this day and age, my preference for a container would be something that I could add to effortlessly from anywhere. When I see something, I happen across it, I just save it into one place. Evernote's the obvious example that I've talked about before, but OneNote on a PC or a Google Doc or Simple Note, other note-taking apps are all fabulous for this. What you want to do is have something where you can gather material and all throw it in one thing. And also the other piece of this is that when you have this particular topic idea or theme that is turning into a story idea, something you're interested in, talk to people about it. Talk to your friends, talk to people who know about it, obviously, as we get into reporting. And when I talk to your friends, just ask them what they think of this and what their reaction is. If they're totally bored by it, then it's probably a sign that it's a boring topic. But get your mind engaged with something and do it by both getting stuff on your own, but also getting stuff from out in the world. The other piece is that you'll be writing to a deadline, but in this case, go ahead and start to jot down notes and think through things and structures as you're gathering all this information into place and as you're doing interviews. But again, making the point about procrastination, you can procrastinate on a lot of things, but if you can start working on drafts and working on things as soon as you can, the easier it's going to make the final product. I'll give you a second to read this other quote from Clark, but again, as you think about saving string, the one thing that I've learned in recent years, really even since I've gotten out of reporting, is that you simply cannot keep everything in your mind at once. If you think of something and you don't write it down or store it in some way, then it's gone. Things will not stick in your head for you to go back and research. Honestly, I think this probably gets worse as you get older, so you may be better at it than I am. But the bottom line is that you need to have a place to keep your ideas. And this applies not just to this class, but to all of your work that you may be doing. Certainly when you get into internships and then into jobs, the more you can record what you need to do and what you need to know, the better off you're going to be. So if you go back and look at the video about Evernote and a system called Getting Things Done, they talk about this idea of having your mind like water. Like if you're not trying to remember everything, like remember everything that's due tomorrow or what you want to do this weekend or what your dog needs or whatever, if you've got all that written out in a list someplace, then you can really start to think critically and thoughtfully across a lot of different things at once. So I do some of my best thinking when I go to sleep or when I'm running, but if I record it, then even though it's gone by morning or by the time I get out of the shower, then I've got it saved safely. Another idea is to keep a notebook or a recorder and make notes to yourself close at hand, email or tweet stuff, and have a system for tagging material so that you can go back and organize it later. So Evernote makes this very simple because you've got tags. And if I click on this and come to the web version of Evernote, then what I have here is an actual cabinet where I've just thrown ideas or thrown things that I want to keep back and refer to. And you'll see I've saved a good number of stories relating to the whole Manti Te'o saga / fiasco because it's a perfect example of, or it's a perfect case study to talk about ethics and reporting and the depth of reporting you need to go to. So just be forewarned, we'll probably be talking about Manti Te'o later on in the semester. But I've also got a lot of stuff here, that a friend sent me about journalism education, other things that I happen to be interested in, whether it's in copy editing, things like that, or the future of journalism and so forth. It's all stuff that I keep here, and I keep it in a cabinet file. It's really just a file here in Evernote where I just keep a whole bunch of stories. You could do the same thing on a computer or your desktop or wherever it happens to be. Another cool tool is Pocket. There's two services like this that are basically just websites that allow you to store anything that you want to and then go back and look at it later. So anything that you can email to yourself or that you find on the web and you just want to save, it's a little extension that pops up right here in your browser, and then when you go to the page, so when you open Pocket, you can see that it allows you to save a whole lot of different things, and it saves them in a fairly rich format with pictures. You can save video and audio and all kinds of things. And these are all just stories that I want to look at some point, but I don't have time to read right this minute. So I'll go through these about once a week or so and either read them and throw them away, or I will read them and save them back to my Evernote cabinet if I want to hang on to them. So these are just two things. I'm not going to require you to do anything, but the main thing is that when it comes time to develop your story ideas and then to turn in your research, it'll show if you haven't done your homework, if you haven't been keeping track of things. So bear that in mind. As always, ask me any questions, and I will see you in class.